Painting on scrapbook pages, like painting anything, is a lot of fun. It really doesn't need to be scary. I want to show you a couple of pages that we've used paint on, and then we'll look at a couple of techniques. So on this page, paint is used in a couple of different ways. It's used as a mat for this photo, so you just brush the paint right on the page and wait for it to dry, then add the photo. And then over here, paint is used along with a foam stamp. Now I have to tell you, trends in scrapbooking, just like trends in fashion and everything else, come and go. And I think it's fair to say that a few years ago it was trendy to use foam stamps and paint on scrapbook pages, and it's something you really don't see as much sometimes anymore, but it's still a very valid technique, and I think it's still a lot of fun to do. Here's another page that uses paint, again in a way that was once upon a time the trend, and who knows, maybe again in the future. But you know what, as I said before, with anything in scrapbooking, it's your scrapbook, you do what you want, and I happen to love paint in scrapbooking. And here is another page from a friend of mine. This is paint used on a transparency. And if you're not familiar with transparencies, they are clear acetate sheets. This one came with a decorative edge around the outside and these words printed on the acetate, on the transparency. And then what you can do is use paint on the back side to highlight the parts that you want to highlight. Here, this brown paint highlights this title and journaling, as well as the border. So those are a couple of ways you can use paint on your scrapbooking. And now I want to show you just how easy it really is. So first, we're going to do that first technique that we saw where the paint is used as a background. I'm going to use this actually as kind of my painter's palette here. This is a non-stick surface that's also a protective surface for your desktop. And I'm going to shake up my paint, obviously very inexpensive acrylic paint that you can buy at your craft store. And I'm going to use just a little bit there. If you feel like your paint is too thick, you can always thin it out with a little bit of water, and I think this is okay right now. We'll see how opaque it is, and then you can also see how it can look with a little bit, when it's diluted just a little bit. How hard was that? Not hard at all. And if this were my photo, I would wait for that to dry, put that down right on top, and that's just how easy it would be. If I wanted to, I could add a little bit of water to that, mix it around a little bit. Again, this is a really fun technique to experiment with because you can then see just how dry the paint gets, how wet it gets. And if you don't have one of these craft sheets at home, you can use a styrofoam plate. Styrofoam is good because it doesn't absorb water. If you use a paper plate, it's going to absorb the paint and you'll get less mileage out of your paint because some of it will actually be absorbed into the paper plate. But a plastic container lid is good. Anything that's plastic or non-porous can be used as a palette. So there's two little samples there. As you can see, the one on the left is a little bit more opaque, and this one is a little bit more transparent. I'm going to set this aside to dry for just a minute, and then I'm going to come back to it. And then meanwhile, I want to pick up another piece of paper and show you another technique. So these paints, I'm going to grab all three of them here, are distress paints. You may have seen them in the store and wondered, well, gee, what do I do with that? This is going to be just one of many different techniques. And as with all of these paints, you want to read the label and understand what they're good for, because these particular paints are good not only on paper, but on lots of other surfaces. But since we're scrapbooking and we're doing some basic things, we're going to just look at what we can do with it on this one little sheet of paper. And again, this is just going to be one technique of many. So I'm going to dab a little bit of each of these colors onto my palette, aka my nonstick surface. And I squished that one down kind of hard. I probably didn't need to do that. And now a little bit more of a third color. Now I'm going to spray a little bit of water here to dilute this, And then I'm going to take this piece of paper in my hand, and I'm going to just kind of wipe it gently across these colors, and we're going to take a look at the effect that that gets us. Oh, kind of interesting. And then depending on, you know what, because I like this so much, I'm going to try the other side of this piece of paper, and let's see what we do here. This may end up muddying the colors, because if you swish this around too much, you're going to get, especially with the colors I use, red and green, total opposites on the color wheel. When you combine those two, they're going to make brown. But here, it's not bad. It's kind of a brick red, which is what I started with anyway. And so if you set this aside and let it dry, or better yet, take your heat tool and dry it a little faster using a heat tool, you'll then be able to do other things on top of this. You could stamp on top of it, you can use it as a mat for a photo, you could write some journaling over it. So many different kinds of things that you can do with a decorative background that you made with paint. Now let's come back to this first page that we used, and I'm going to put it right on top of this mat that has paint on the back side of it. So I've got my white background, and this paint is already dry. So now I'm going to show you how to stamp with paint. And I'm actually even going to use a different kind of paint. These paints are a little bit higher end. They're very popular with people who like to do art journaling, but they're also great for scrapbooking and all manner of mixed media and crafts and painting. So I'm going to take a fresh foam brush for this one, because I don't want to mess up the first one that I used, and take my copper paint and my mat, my stamp. Actually, I think I'm going to need a little bit more paint. There we go. Okay. Now for stamping with paint, you don't need a lot of paint on your stamp. You want to coat it, and I'm using my foam brush to coat my stamp with paint. And the foam brush has kind of a chiseled end, so it makes it really easy to do. But just enough to coat it. And now I'm going to stamp my letter onto my first layer of paint. Just press it gently, pick it up, and there's my letter A. Okay, and then obviously that's all there is to it. From there on, you would just continue stamping the rest of your word. And on this stamp, I had a little less paint. This one was thick, and if you can, I don't know if you can see, but around the edges of my first letter A, I've got a little bit of paint lifting up around the edge where the paint was still kind of thick on that foam, on the foam stamp, even though I thought that it was dry, or that it was a thin, even coat. It was actually a little thicker than I thought. So I'm going to stamp a couple of more letters here, and there's my friend Anna's name. With a variety of paints, you can just have so much fun with scrapbooking, and each paint has a different purpose. So take time to look around in the paint section of the store, or maybe in that stash of paints that you have at home. Pull them out and bring them onto your scrapbooking page.